woman from Kenya. Very strong Maasai, very strong Maasai woman, international woman. She works with the Bawang Group. I also invite the other friends. Where's the other? And now, where's the other? You ask them to come. Get them. Grab them and bring it. Yeah. Wanko says he just want to drink some coffee and look up. He'll come because, yeah, you will come. This is my long friend since 2009. We know each other. All these people, all are.
Vamos a empezar. Hello? Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. Closer. There. It is a great pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you for this amazing invitation, and it's wonderful, especially to be at the Restoration Pavilion. We have a great event coming up. We're a little bit off schedule, but I think we can run it a bit and use the time at the end. And we're here in Indigenous Knowledge in Land Conservation and Restoration. And the objective of this panel today will be to hear the voices of three amazing people that are here with me today, telling about their story. And what is very important today is that we want to hear and listen about different values related to land. So we know that land is a very ample, can have very ample meanings and different meanings in different contexts. And we feel that from the indigenous and ancestral viewpoints, that meaning of land can have lots of important benefits and bring a lot of solutions to the problems that we have today. So this session today is aimed at sharing some of those different values associated to land as seen from the holistic perspective of the indigenous people, and show what's more important, how those values can support successful restoration and conservation measures. And learn from that. We think that we can go not just from being inspired by that holistic view, but see how we can take those views into action, and how in action it'll make a lot of sense to have that holistic view. We also think there's important lessons to be learned from that indigenous and ancestral viewpoint. And that those lessons can be taken to different areas and shared amongst different peoples and different parts of the world with similar landscapes. So I would like to start today with an introduction of the people that are with me. And I will start with Margarita Rosa Villafañe. She is an Arhuaco an Arhuaco woman leader from the Arhuaco indigenous tribe in northern Colombia, from the Sierra Nevada of Santa Marta, rated one of the top 10 most unique sites on Earth. And she has she's been recognized for her leadership with a long track record in the fight for the preservation, environment, and defense of the human rights of the Arhuaco people. She is a spokesperson for women, and at this times when gender demands more inclusion and respect, her role has been key with working with the elders of her tribe. On my right, I am also very honored to present to you Pasang Dolma. Dr. Pasang, she is the Executive Director of the Center for Indigenous Peoples Research and Development, CIPRED, and she has been working with Indigenous people, women, and local communities for the promotion and recognition of traditional knowledge, cultural values, and customary institutions that contributed for natural resource management, very active in climate change and climate change resilience and sustainable development. And she's been doing this for more than a decade at both national and international levels, including the United Nations Convention on Climate Change. And on my left is Mohamed Halaket, who is a respected elder from the Waso Boran indigenous pastoralist community of northern Kenya. known for his deep understanding of traditional practices and sustainable land management. He has a robust experience in promoting the conservation of natural resources in arid and semi arid environments. And Halake has become a key voice in advocating for the integration of indigenous knowledge in modern land restoration efforts. So we have three people that know a lot about restoration, about conservation, and who are doing it from a very special holistic view that we would like to share with all of you today. We're going to start then with a round of questions. And my first question is, I think it's important when we understand, for us to understand the different values, to also understand what the communities and the groups where these people come from, what the environmental stewardship that is brought along, and the value of land, which is centered around that sacredness of land. And sacredness, although it's different for each of these groups, we will see that there is a common thread to that sacredness of land. So one of the aspects will be those values of land, but also part of the question will be, or what I want to focus now, is how does that vision come down to action? And maybe we can have a specific example of your work. We might have specific examples from some of them. Dr. Pasang has ample knowledge in several different communities, so she also has lots of different examples. But basically, we want to do that. We want to know what that vision is and how to go from the vision to the action. And I'm going to start then with Pasang, who has a short video, introductory video of the center that she leads in Nepal. Okay, Pasang, the word is yours then, to tell us a little bit about those sacred values of land that are held by the Sherpa people And you already gave us a very good view into the action part and how those views can be put into action. But perhaps you can complement more.
Thank you, Christine. I just would like to remember my ancestors, my families back home, with a short pray for them. Aho Bajra Guru Pema Siddhi Ho Mane Peme Ho. I just remember my ancestors, my families, elders who have put every effort to make, sustain, and continue our shared values, our our connection to the roots, and to be continued by our children. Tasidile, good afternoon, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here, and thank you very much for your invitation, for the opportunity to join here in COP16 UNCCD. This is my first time. This is historical for me, joining the COP UNCCD, but also the historical for me coming to this land for the first time. So I'm really super excited and also very excited to learn from each others in the journey for dealing with the climate change, biodiversity, restorations, land conservation, and beyond, where it matters for us because everything's all parts are so interconnected because of our symbiotic relationship with the nature and the lands we are from. And just to tell you that I'm the youngest child among 11 children. My mother was great leaders. I always, I miss her. She passed in when she was 95 years. My father passed away when he was 98 years. My grandmom passed away when she was 113 years. Not because of disease. She just fell down from the stair. I just recall the past history of my ancestors. Why? Because we have been living so sustainable lives. Whatever we need, we just grow from our backyards, from our farm, from the forest, and that was the life. I'm mother of 3 children. I have one son and 2 daughters. And what I learned from my parents, both my father and mother were great leaders. They are dearly missed in the communities. They often say the gem of the village is lost. And I really hope to revive that gem through my work at the community level, national level, global level, whatever I do, every effort. I put my every efforts that connect and make my ancestors, my parents happy what their daughters is doing. And I really wish this to be continued by my children and other young generations. For indigenous people in Asia, particularly Asia and Pacific, we all are known like 36.2% of indigenous people around the world, contributing big contribution, more than 80%, more than 90%, I say. Because when you see really on the ground, when you go to the community, the indigenous peoples have been every actions contribute for restoration, sustainability, management. I do not see anything. Even like a big crisis comes, like a COVID or flood, we have a reciprocity principles, helping each other. We are very resilient. But all our values, all our practices, of all our belief system is snatched away. We are detached from our lands, and our land is a soul. So what happens when the soul is detached from the body? This is the situation we have been facing. Our indigenous brothers, sisters, our elders, our children are facing this situation as if our soul is being detached. And we become like more like pendulum. Neither we exist in this world of modern world, nor we are able to go back to our roots. That's why we are here for. In the name of conservation, in the name of modern education, in the name of developments, everything, whatever we do, because it never gives the space for us to breathe. Our children, detaching from the homelands, away from the language, away from our connections, spiritual values, that clearly shows we are moving ahead very unsustainable future. The future of children, neither they go back to roots nor they can sustain in this modern world. We have to do something. That is one of the reasons why we really need to urge into actions. And another part, I just would like to mention that, you know what is happening? Yesterday we were talking. I was really amazed in Colombia. Maybe we should learn from Colombia. Christine and Margarita were just having kind of informal chit chat. And I really felt we wish to have. And when I was told, oh, the situation of Nepal is like 100 years back, this really struck me. I have been traveling around the world. But when you see in Asia, we have been working not in Nepal only, different part of Asia, South Asia and Southeast Asia, where I'm directly, indirectly involved. I'm also teaching in the university. We have been working collaboration with different universities around the world and moving our best to bring the paradigm shift, changing the narratives, who indigenous people are, and making our children, our young generation, forget anything but live with a respect and dignified life. That what we aim from indigenous-led research and education in the university and beyond academic and non-academic discourse. Because our children's, our communities are suffering and we do not have any more, strength to bear with. For example, in Chepang communities in Nepal, Chepang, Tharu, Bote, who have been living for generation and generation. Now in the national park, detachments, pushing outside the national park, eviction, displacements. This is the common story in my country. And I just would like to read one part that, what I learned now recent. Is 10 minutes over? I can talk a little bit? Yeah. Recently I was lucky to join International's Indigenous Research Conference in Auckland, in New Zealand, organized by NAPAI, Ote Maramatanga, and the Auckland University. And I learned from Maoris, no, which is very similar any part of the world who are indigenous peoples. For Maoris, they say like indigenous peoples of New Zealand, they say like we are rise from the lands and the sea. The land grows bone, flesh, while water constitute our form and nurture wellness. We are the land, we are the sea. However, due to the external threats, including pollution, they have been forced into precarious lands and more risks double up with the climate change. So this is the world we are living. And it's so important that we really need to enhance all our values, our knowledge, our practices are embedded with our customary governance and our led by customary institution. That is what CIPRED is doing. We have seen in my short video that first time in the history in Nepal, within conservation, we were able to recognize Shagya customary institution at the local laws, and which has been inaugurated by our prime ministers. So things are moving step by step. There are more work to be done. There are more collaboration need to be enhanced, more network, and build this passion among our young generation for our shared values to be continued. I'll stop now, but I'll have more. I know the indication. Thank you.
Thank you, Pasang. And yes, please. I think it's really beautiful what you said about that connection to the land. The land is a soul, and when the communities are disconnected from that land, they lose the soul. And unfortunately, we think that, or we give it for granted, that Indigenous communities are well, but we see, as Basang told us, that there are still many countries that are not securing the rights of the Indigenous people to the land. It continues to happen today. They're taken away from their land, their culture is taken away, and we're losing a huge heritage that could have a lot of the solutions that we need to the problems we're facing today. So having said that, I want to give the word to Margarita, who comes from, as I said, the Arhuaco people. Her territory is actually superimposed with a national park, and they have a very positive relationship with the government there, where there are treaties. The management plan is done by both the indigenous communities and the government. So as we said, it's a very interesting example. And in that case, I would like Margarita then to tell us a little bit about the vision of the Arhuaco people and how that vision is enacted in action where you live, Margarita.
Bueno, buenos días, buenas tardes para todos. Muchas gracias por permitirme estar con ustedes, compartir con cada uno de ustedes. Bueno, yo vengo del corazón del mundo, Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, al norte de Colombia. Aquí pueden ver las figuras de protección que tiene ese territorio como resultado de trabajo que hemos hecho los pueblos indígenas, los 4 pueblos indígenas, Kogi, Wiwa, Arhuaco. Yo soy de la etnia Arhuaca. Y para poder proteger, la visión nuestra es proteger, conservar el territorio sagrado de la Sierra Nevada. Decimos que corazón del mundo porque a pesar de que es una pequeña montaña en la parte norte de Colombia, pero cerca al mar, y que ahí reúne todo el ecosistema y también las especies del mundo se resumen en las pequeñas montañas. Entonces, por eso decimos que corazón del mundo, y nuestra misión es, nuestra convicción está en nuestra mente, en nuestra forma de ser, que lo más importante, lo sagrado, es el territorio. Esa convicción de la valoración del territorio no es una cuestión de hoy, es de toda la vida. Desde la creación del mundo, decimos nosotros, tenemos la ley de origen, a través de ello nosotros protegemos nuestro territorio.
So I'm just going to translate real quick this first part. Margarita comes from the north of Colombia. We can see the map here. There's an ecosystem. There's a mountain that's this mountain up north. It's not part of the Andes. It's the tallest mountain on the shores, on the coastal mountain. You can see the snow from the ocean. And because it has all the different ecosystems from the lowlands up to the snow, they call it the heart of the world. There are various figures of protection in that land that the indigenous people have fought for, not just indigenous reservation, but also a national park, biosphere. And the most important thing for the Arhuaco people is to protect the sacred ancestral territory of the people. They have been able to get a lot of the territory in their lands, in their reservation, but there is still more to be done. And the work of the mind for them is based on that thought of the territory as being sacred. And that ties to what they call the law of origin, which is the law that rules the 4 peoples that live, the 4 traditional people that live in the mountain, of which the Arhuaco people are one.
Nuestra relación con el territorio está desde la forma en que nosotros nos desenvolvemos a través de nacimiento, bautizo, matrimonio, la mortoria. En cada una de las etapas está estrechamente relacionada con el territorio. En los territorios existen sitios sagrados que donde nosotros hacemos rituales, donde nos indica a través de esos rituales, nos va conduciendo qué es lo que tenemos que hacer a futuro. Y esa es como la ruta que fija en medio de esta relación que tenemos con el territorio, y es la manera como nosotros establecemos el equilibrio, la armonía y esa interrelación permanente entre el hombre y la naturaleza, es decir, los indígenas y la naturaleza. Entonces, la base fundamental de la existencia de nosotros siempre está basado en el acceso en los territorios, y es importante tener asiento en nuestros territorios. En una época fuimos desplazados de los lugares donde nosotros vivíamos, y posteriormente pues hemos ido recuperando esos lugares, esos sitios, dejando la parte alta como parte de la conservación y bajando un poco para poder vivir, poder habitar, poder producir para el sustento de nosotros. Y en esa medida es la forma como hemos establecido zonas de protección, zonas de producción y zonas también de esa relación de, digamos, de la vida humana con el uso del territorio. No sé si...
So the development for the Arhuaco people is based on that relationship with the earth, with the land. From birth, baptism, marriage, and death, all the cycle of life goes through different moments, and they're all very much related to land. There are also sacred sites for rituals in their land. It's places that they protect both physically and spiritually. And it's those sites that allow for the equilibrium and harmony to be within their group and also for the planet. And it's in that interbeing between people and nature that the Arhuaco people live. Their existence is based on the access to land. That is why it's so important. They have been displaced historically from their land at different moments, and they've been able to recuperate part of that land. And when they do, they make sure that they can conserve the natural ecosystems. So usually the highlands and the higher parts of the watersheds are conserved, and the populations live down in the lower parts where they can do production and live sustainably from the land. So, listo. Okay, thank you, Margarita. An applause for Margarita, please. Now I want to turn to Halake from Kenya. Halake has also a very interesting viewpoint from a very different culture of pastoralist, and I will let Halake tell us a bit more about that relationship to land, and also how from his community they've been able to lead conservation and restoration projects with a long-term view. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, my audience, organizers. My name is Alake Mohammed. I'm an elder from northern Kenya. Northern Kenya is a region that hosts pastoralist communities from diverse ethnic groups in 9 counties. So my focus here is the northern part, but we have other, communities, pastoralist communities. We have around 9 pastoralist communities and around 9 counties who are practicing pastoralism, and pastoralism is their way of life. When I now come to the issues of land, how pastoralist communities value land, indigenous pastoralist communities of northern Kenya, the land holds a very important cultural and spiritual identity. Communities, however, associated land with their culture. It holds cultural identity. And also intertwined with cultural heritage and connected to their ancestors. Land is the most important aspect of livelihood in the pastoralist communities, it secures a livelihood. Pastoralist communities, land to pastoralism is a source of livelihood to indigenous people of northern Kenya. So since it hosts, grazing grounds, water resources, and other many, important aspects of livelihood. So pastoralist communities values land on that aspect. At the same time, there is, communal ownership of the land. Land is seen as the communal resource managed collectively by, different communities within the region of northern Kenya. It is this management governance system is managed by the communities council of elders. Different diverse pastoralist groups in Kenya have unique and special traditional governance structures. For my case, for northern Kenya, where I come from, the pastoralist, the Wasoboran, there is a structure, a traditional structure called Deda Council. Deda Council is the structure which is, managing the resources and everything on behalf of the community. So they are the key decision makers. At the same time, in other communities, in our other community, pastoralist communities, all communities have a structure in place, that unique traditional governance structures that manage, traditional resource management system. So this ownership, this traditional governance ownership system ensure equitability access to all community members. At the same time, with pastoralist communities, land is considered as sacred. Certain hills, forests, stones are considered sacred. It holds spiritual significance and respected, for the purposes of rituals and ceremonies. So land is very important for pastoralist communities. All this reflects their reliance on land, shaping their way of life and reduce resilience, amidst environmental challenges. At the same time, land is also important for pastoralist communities, and we value land because it's a cornerstone. It's a vital source, a resource, and a cornerstone of spiritual and social cohesion. So, pastoralist communities value land because of all these importance. At the same time, it also has economical value. The land provides pasture and water essential for the livelihood of the livestock of the pastoralist communities, because pastoralist communities depend on this livestock for their livelihood. This is the only source of livelihood. They don't know much about farming, but they solely depend on the livestock for their food security. At the same time, there is cultural significance. The land is seen as societal heritage with specific sites holding cultural significance, and thus protected, managed, and also conserved and restored. These are all important. These are all values pastoralist communities give to the land. Sustainability is also the relationship with the land, emphasizes balance and care with practice, like rotational grazings. Pastoralist communities, I think in my slides, it can be able to see there is an aspect of mobility as a way of conserving and restoring land. Pastoralist communities practice this for them to restore and also conserve land. It's a way of, as a practice of conserving and restoring land. Mobility is one of it. At the same time, there is also issues of engaging the council, the data council, and the other structures, unique structures in different pastoralist communities. These structures make decisions on how the resources are divided within the regions, how communities plan the grazing patterns, how communities move from one region to another, so that once that mobility is done, then when livestock move from one place to another, it will give an opportunity for that land to rest and regenerate. That one is a way of, conserving and restoring land. It is a practice that has been there since time immemorial, and it has helped pastoralist communities thrive for many years. Despite the current, occurrences of climate change, which has tried to interrupt some of these practices, but the pastoralist communities, as a nature, is still continue, to become resilient and adapt to, to the shocks of climate change. Land is very vital. We respect land, and we also respect nature. As a pastoralist community, we also respect wildlife. Once we manage our land well, then the wildlife which is also on that land is going to be respected. When you come to watering points, many pastoralist communities, after watering their livestock, leave a small water in the trap so that the wild animals come and drink at night. This is an holistic approach. Is an approach that takes care of nature, takes care of environment, takes care of all living beings in those regions. It's harmonious. It also helps communities thrive, different communities. The structure, the council of elders, the leather council of elders for my community, also in times of hardships, there is a structure. There is a structure and decisions which entails community sharing, which is very important. The communities, maybe when one community has problems, with their livestock do not have pasture, communities come together, and then they agree. The elders agree that this time round, the neighboring community is given, a chance to come and graze in this region, and so that they can be able, to survive. That one is called community sharing, and it is practiced within all the indigenous pastoralist communities in northern Kenya. It's a strategy that brings harmony, love between communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Halake. I think it's so important how these traditional governance and ownership systems rely on harmony, rely on balance between the communities, and that's something that I think it's a definite lesson that we can learn, is not only respecting those traditional governance systems that are in place, but also perhaps learning lessons from them so that we can keep conflicts at low. And I want to share one interesting story that Halaka shared with me very quickly on how when they move to a different pasture, they make different water holes, but they know that they have to only make the ones necessary, because if they make more, that's going to make other pastoral groups come, and that then makes way for conflict. So also how from that traditional knowledge, it's so obvious that you only take what you need, because when you take more, then conflict arises. Okay, with this, thank you for that first round. I want to go now into a second round of interventions, and I want to again focus more on the action. Thank you. It's going to be, we're only going to have about 3 minutes, but we started a little bit late, so and just a few takeaways from how to bring that knowledge into local action, and what takeaways do you think we can bring to a place like this, like the COP16 that we're in right now? So I'm going to start now with Margarita.
Bueno, una plataforma como esto tan importante, yo creo que es lograr que a partir de estos escenarios, estas voces, todas las voces que han llegado aquí, frente a la protección de la tierra, es lograr alianzas, grandes alianzas que vayan en pro de la conservación y protección de la tierra, porque en la tierra no solamente plantamos, sino también tenemos el agua, que es la parte de la vida. Yo creo que también deben crearse decisiones muy importantes para llevarlo a las acciones, para que esto no solamente quede en un evento y ya, sino que realmente eso repercuta en grandes acciones a través de algún mecanismo que pueda apoyar sobre todo aquellos que están preocupados por la protección y conservación del planeta. Bueno, no quiero alargarme porque pues ya nos queda poco tiempo y darle tiempo a los compañeros.
Okay, thank you, Margarita. So this is a COP is obviously a platform, a very important platform, and perhaps for her takeaway here would be to listen to those voices that are calling for Earth's protection, and the key word here would be alliances, making alliances and making sure that indigenous groups are seen as a group with which to ally, with which to support, and of course, to make the appropriate mechanism so that the actions can be taken for those people that are already taking action, even without the mechanisms being in place. So building those mechanisms would truly support, enhance those conservation and restoration efforts that are being taken place, right? Thank you, Margarita. Now I'd like, Halake, for you, some of your takeaways from your ancestral viewpoints that you would want to share with us, and more than with us, that perhaps to bring into decision makers that are here at the COP.
My parting shot takeaway is to prioritize indigenous communities driven nature-based solutions to enhance climate resilience, focusing on sustainable land and empowering indigenous people communities through recognition of their traditional knowledge and practices. That's my takeaway.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you, Halake. And to finish, Pasang, perhaps from your experience, especially you've been very active in different United Nations platforms, but not here in the UNCCD. So what would be your message here?
Thank you. My message here is, we have been really putting forward that indigenous peoples, women, youth are not just only vulnerable. No? The whole world, the resource, education, development approach always presented indigenous peoples as a vulnerable. But on the top of that, it's a vulnerable. But at the same time, indigenous peoples have also solution. No solution of our values, practices, cultures, and customary governance. Indigenous peoples are not just only the victim, but indigenous peoples are also the leaders, guardians, safeguarders. No, and then also with the solution as the key actors, and that recognition need to be recognized in our narratives of research and documentation, policy discourse, and if we do that one, we can bring some paradigm shift in the mindset how indigenous people are looked, and also bring hope and aspiration among our young and children that what we are learning from our home and from our ancestor and from our elders, actually this is what the solution brings for sustainability, restoration and land conservation. I really hope here in the COP16 UNCCD will bring all this learning from UNFCC and CBD, where recognition of indigenous knowledge and cultural values already started, and I see it's already beginning here, and it need to be amplified, and that is what the sustainability, that is where the dignity, and that what gives the aspiration for our children to live with the respect and dignity and continue our shared values and practices for sustainable future for all of us to live with harmony and peaceful manner. Thank you.
Thank you. So it seems like we do have a few more minutes, and Halake wants to take the word. So we will give the word to Halake. I'll do some finishing, and then we can have some questions if there are any from the audience.
Just 1 minute. Before I forget, I want to recognize the participation of indigenous women and youth are as an important agent of conservation and restoration of their land in northern Kenya. So they should be recognized and should be included in the international spaces for them to advocate for their land.
Thank you very much. That is a very key point, and it's one of the key points also of the work of Margarita, as she's in charge of women and youth issues, and also in Cypret Pasang, who also has a very strong gender and especially youth oriented work for the future. So before I pass on the words for questions, I just wanted to add from my own point of view as well, working in an NGO that is not Indigenous, but that does work with Indigenous communities. For us, it has been key to work alongside with Indigenous people, to learn from them, to also go into dialogues where we can look at the scientific knowledge, also look at the traditional knowledge, and find ways of co-creating solutions based on that ancestral view and taking into account all the technology that is available to support that ancestral view, not to go against it. And so I really have to say I'm very thankful for people and elders that are able to that have maintained that information and that are willing to share it with us. I think it's a very important moment when we should take advantage that there are so many different solutions to the different problems that we are facing today, and they are right there in front of us. And sometimes we don't want to listen to them. Those voices have been marginalized in our society. Those viewpoints are thought of as being maybe less than the mainstream scientific views, which are also important. And that's not to say not to take them into account, but to go into dialogue so we can co-construct together. When you co-construct, you're not thinking in one project with a certain time, you're thinking in the long term. And that's one of the things I learned from actually one of Margarita's elders when we started with an idea of working in the ecosystem. And he said, when people come here and you have a project for 1 year, 2 years, sometimes 5 years, for us, it's been a 500-year-old project, and it goes way into time. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that. And I want to thank each of the panelists today for taking the time to come here to the COP and to share with us their invaluable knowledge. Thank you also to the audience for staying with us. And I would like to open the floor because we have maybe a time for a couple questions. Now we have lots of time. Okay, so we do have questions if there's any questions from the audience. So 2 questions, 1 here and then 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you to the panelists, Edna Katoya from Pawanka Fund, but also the Indigenous Peoples Caucus here. And glad to see some of our Pawanka partners who are doing amazing work, CPRED and other JAPESA. In terms of your work, I want to know what you've seen in terms of integrating issues around intergenerational learning, because that's important for really ensuring the transmission of traditional knowledge between generations and also bridging that knowledge, because youth come with innovation as well. They also have some level of wisdom as well. But we see a challenge in terms of bridging that gap between generations and transmitting that knowledge within our communities, and a lot of demand for support in terms of funding that. But also other challenge I see, and I don't know if you face it, where we find communities now saying we are losing our language, and to relate with land and knowledge, you need to know a language. I'm sure you have specific code words that mean this area is banned for a particular use, particular period. I come from a pastoralist community, also from northwestern Kenya. And that is a challenge, because when you lose language, then you lose that knowledge, because this key to use of land. And then I like that he said about biocultural landscape, because within communities, like for my community, we don't say land. We don't have a word for land. So when people talk about land, it's us, it's a territory, it's a living space, it's a cultural landscape. So how do you bridge that within the community between different generations? But also, are you engaging as well, Halake, with policymakers really to understand this data governance systems? I see they made headways in terms of reserve. So I'd like your feedback on that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So it's a question a bit for everyone, right? And Halak, I don't know if you want to start since there's a direct part for you.
Yeah,
Engaging with
thank
the
you very
past.
much, Madam Edna. Yeah, she's from Kenya. I think the issues of language is a very important aspect of indigenous people. There are some communities in northern Kenya right now. They are called El Molos. They have issues with the land. Only four elders understand the original language of that community. So there are many issues. But the most important thing from the perspective of now the Waso Boran, when the child was born, that child is going to be mentored on the through the cultural way of life. You cannot try and what makes the language disappear is when the child is born, you try to talk the language which is foreign to that child. So if you instill that one in that child, then it is very difficult for that child to understand culture, because even the language itself, which is the entry point, is diminishing. So I really advocate and support that the language of the indigenous languages. There are many different indigenous groups in the world. So the language diminishes because I can say the parents must instill from the onset must instill language to their child. So language is more of connected to culture and also to land. So it is very important that we put that one in place. In my community right now, I have three sons, and for the first 7 years, they have been learning. We have been teaching them language. We have been teaching them culture. We have been teaching them lineage. The family lineage using our local language, and now they understand their language. They understand their land and also their culture. So it is very important to start from that, onset. But if you now go and enroll your child in an English school, and they talk just English, there is no time that child is going to know their culture. It's very difficult. No, when it comes now to teaching their culture, you are going to start another class of teaching culture when the child is from northern Kenya. So I say your concerns are genuine, and we as pastoralist communities, uh, actually we are practicing in our area. But if you look at places like Nairobi, the capital city, the children in the capital city and the children in northern Kenya, it's like different world. They don't understand language. So and then at the same time for other communities from other difference of the world, each and every communities have their language. So that language has to be preserved. And if you don't try to instill language and teach language to your children at the tender age, then that language is going to diminish.
Thank you. Thank you, Halake. I don't know if you.
So I support Edna's idea, and I say we have to, put emphasis on, teaching, transmission of traditional knowledge and culture, and also language to our children.
Thank you, Halake. And Pasang wants to add to that question as well.
We have enough time, right? Yeah,
We're taking it slowly, so.
because you know very difficult to squeeze, no? Yeah. Anyway, thank you for the flexible time. Thank you, Edna. My sisters from Kenya, and we have been very good friend, and we always appreciate Pawanka for their support for documentations, enhancing, for indigenous led research, that part. Thank you very much for your very great questions. Language is very core to my heart because I really believe If we lost our language, we lost our knowledge. If we lost our knowledge, we lost our passion. And the connection to the roots is embedded in our language, what we speak. Every word has a meaning. Like for example, my name is Pasang Dolma Sherpa. Pasang means Friday. Dolma is a female deity, and I was born on Friday. But if you see, like when I was in the school, my teacher changed my name because Pasang is very alien word for them. They don't understand what Pasang doesn't make any sense for them. They changed my name. When till I was 11 months, 11 years, I was struggling. Who am I? No, I'm Kanchimaya, the teacher's name that gave it to me, or Pasang at home. So it was really, really kind of confusion for the children, for the indigenous children. I feel like there are many, many indigenous children like me. And I was lucky to revive my name back. No, and this is just the example only. Our modern education system simply don't accept it. And that has been one of the reasons why the indigenous people language is disappearing day by day. In the context of Nepal, after 1950s, we opened the modern world, modern education. Our education system is just copy paste of education, what has been developed, English as a main medium of instruction to colonize India by British colony. And that has been copy pasted in my country. Nepali becomes a colonizing as a means of instruction in school. Any children who speak their mother tongue, they're abandoned coming to school. I did my study on multilingual education and Tamang communities. And in my study, I found 80% indigenous people, high dropout rate after secondary. From the primary, who can cook, they continue because they are afraid of their parents sending to school. Teachers is like, but once they are going to the high school, they just dropped out. High dropout rate. Why? It's because of language barrier. No? So language is so important. And language is the only hope for our connection to our roots. And that is what we have been putting every efforts. Like now, very recently, we have been also working in the loss and damage. And loss and damage, not just only the climate change. The last loss and damage by the modern education brought among our children. And we revive of our language classes. And we started working also climate change educations, textbook, in our own language, in the language children speak, through narration of our elders, from our knowledge holders, and that is why we started. And now we also started at least once in a week our language class, our mother tongue. For example, my children, they are learning many many languages, and I'm glad because they are very quick in picking up, not like us, like we do not have space to like understanding, because I see amazing the children pick up very fast. And my children are learning, they learn, they speak, but they also learn in a proper school once in a week, mother tongue language class, where they learn not only language but also our cultural values, our song, our dance, our music. And that has really interconnected among the Sherpa groups. And this is what we want to promote among even also other indigenous groups. And I believe this is the hope. And this is what makes them interconnection and of their collective action and revival, revitalization of our shared values, and something ignite within yourself to live respect and dignity. And that is very, very important. And that is the hope and for sustainability, and that should be revived from each of us among our children, and that is the sustainability for our future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, before we go on to our next question, I wanted to add real quick a recent study about language that was published, and it said how indigenous languages, more than 70% of their words are verbs, whereas other Western languages, it's more nouns. So, and that might sound like something very easy, but what it means is that we call things now, things, the chair, the forest, this, But when we use it as verbs, it's something that we do. So it's not the forest, but I'm foresting. It's not the land, but I'm landing. And that makes such a different change in the way that you relate to the land. So it's something to keep in mind about the importance of indigenous languages in that relationship to the land. Okay, let's go on to our next. Do you want to? Okay, real quick, Halake.
Yeah, this is a quick one. I want to recognize Pawanka Fund in this conference because they have supported indigenous communities in our region for so many years on issues of indigenous knowledge and knowledge transmission. That El Molo community I was talking about was supported around twice by Pawanka Fund to revive that, their language. So I really appreciate and salute Pawanka Fund in this conference, and I also ask them to continue supporting pastoralist communities in all the aspects of, restoration and supporting communities on indigenous knowledge transfer. So they also supported my organization recently, and we are also implementing that project. Thank you very much, Edna.
I think that point is very important, and it's a message also to policymakers. When we fund and when we support culture, we're also supporting nature conservation with indigenous culture. So, and that's very important because sometimes we think we can only spend resources on the tree, but spending resources on governance system, on culture, on education is going to get you many more trees planted, and not just planted, but taken care of during their lifetime. Okay, now let's go on to our next question.
Okay, thank you very much for the speakers. My name is Camilo Romero. So I would like to ask this question: is if in your knowledge, in your traditional culture, the land, the trees, the rivers, if they also have their own voice, and the question is if yes, it will be valuable to bring that voice in addition to your voice here. Um, I'm asking this because usually the discourse is focused on how valuable land is for us, for humans, but also if you in your culture also is like, okay, land and trees and rivers, they have their own needs independently from us.
Okay, I'm going to let Margarita answer this. But si quieres explícale mejor la pregunta.
Tienen su propia voz, diferente de la voz de los humanos, y si hablan.
Bueno, desde la concepción cultural nuestra es que cada cosa, cada elemento de la tierra tiene energía, y donde hay energía hay voz. Desde esa concepción, todo el accionar o el hacer de las cosas nuestras es bajo respeto. Nosotros no actuamos, no intervenimos el uso de la tierra de manera arbitraria, siempre hay a través de un proceso ritual, y esa guía es el mamo. El mamo es la autoridad espiritual que con conocimiento muy profundo es el que orienta, dice dónde se puede producir, dónde se puede construir, dónde se puede hacer acciones en el uso de la tierra. En esa medida, pues nos orienta, nos guía a tener medidas, a tener control sobre el uso de la tierra y sobre todo el tema del agua. Nosotros, la protección de la tierra va en equilibrio, va en armonía de cómo conservemos, de cómo hagamos el uso de la tierra, es lo que nos va a permitir a largo tiempo, o sea, la vida a largo tiempo. Entonces, todo depende en la forma en que nosotros actuemos en el uso de la tierra. Esa conciencia lo tenemos desde niño, desde muy pequeño, vamos creciendo con ese sentido. Y pues en esa forma, como decía, ¿no? Hace rato que hay sitios sagrados, entonces ahí está como el padre o la madre de cada una de las cosas donde nosotros podemos consultar y saber hasta qué tanto podemos intervenir en el uso de la tierra. Y eso está relacionado con el lenguaje, con la alimentación, con todo. Entonces, todo está sincronizado, todo está armonizado, todo está en equilibrio. Entonces, por eso el mundo nuestro siempre es en esa sincronización, en ese equilibrio. Por eso hablamos de que somos hermanos mayores por la responsabilidad que tenemos en ese comportamiento, en esa forma de actuar, teniendo en cuenta presente de que hay otras personas, otra sociedad más grande y que necesita de nuestra responsabilidad en el uso del territorio o de la tierra. No sé si me hice explicar.
Okay. I'm going to do a summarized translation of that. And basically, in the Arhuaco way of thinking, each element has energy. And because they have energy, they also have a voice. And the way that the Arhuaco people go around doing their job is very respectful of those other voices. Nothing is arbitrary. Every interaction with the land, whether it's hunting, whether it's planting, is led by a spiritual leader known as the Mamo. And the Mamo is the one that orients and thank you. Now we do have 10 minutes. Is the one that orients and goes to the sacred sites to ask for permission to these sites, that to the different elements, ask for permission to nature to use land or to use or any resource in any way. So those actions that they do, they're very much led by control, by conscience, and that's why they speak of the Arhuaco people as being the older sibling that is responsible and that teaches the rest of society, the younger sibling, how to do things responsibly with nature, listening to that voice. Okay, and we have one more. Can we go through the last question since now we do have 10 more minutes?
Should I
Thank
take the
you.
full 10 minutes?
We'll close for the answers.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this session. I just came here by coincidence, and then I really enjoyed it. I think faith brought me here, and so my name is Salma. I'm from Morocco, and I really enjoy the discussions with my own indigenous people in my own country, and I always have this question. So my grandma, may her soul rest in peace. She was the most wise person I knew in my life. Like any topic, she would just give a full whole perspective to it, and I would just go to her to any question I have in my life. Sadly, she passed away, and then I see that like the new generation of grandmothers, and then soon my mom will be a grandmother, and how the chain goes. But then we can transfer language, we can transfer indigenous concepts, culture, everything. But there is one particular thing that is really, really special in our previous generations, which is wisdom. And this wisdom is how they actually create this synergy with nature, how she used to be a sustainable person even if she never went to school. She only learned how to the basic things. She never went to a master's program that I did, and then to learn about sustainability or to learn about things that we do so that we don't harm the environment. They just naturally did it, and she wasn't only she didn't only do it herself, but her entire region and her entire tribune used to do it before, of course, moving to the city. And I just wonder if there is this transfer, if this transfer can be also accompanied with wisdom. And I'm pretty sure that there is no one, let's not, let's give hope. But I think that there is a generation of wise grandparents, and why we always this wisdom related to the elderly. We might find some young people that have this wisdom, and how can we develop it in our, let's say, children? Why not? So these concepts that are transferred, can they really hold in them the wisdom? And is there a way to wisdomize the people of our generation and the future ones to just naturally care about the environment, and not, we don't have to teach it in schools? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if somebody wants to answer that. Halake, a part of it, yes, of course.
Thank you very much for your question. The transfer of knowledge, the transfer of indigenous knowledge, should not be transfer of knowledge alone. It should accompany wisdom. So in our traditional society, northern Kenya, where I come from, the Waso Boran, when this knowledge transfer is initiated within the family or within the community, there are special occasions called tufa. Special occasions is planned. Special occasions is arranged by the elders from the community. So in that special occasions, young people who are now ready to take up roles, from the elders, are going to be engaged in that process. And at the end of the process, the elders, when the elders now want to transfer knowledge to them, they transfer that knowledge with in that ceremony called tufa. Tufa means the elders speak at the hand of the young people now. So the transfer now goes together with the wisdom, you know. No, that way now, the younger generations, the youths, were going to take up that knowledge together with the wisdom. Because knowledge without wisdom cannot help. Yeah, so it's very important question, and I really wanted to answer that. Actually, I also got that from my father. So it's very important. Yeah. So when elders want to transfer knowledge, they transfer indigenous knowledge with wisdom, not only knowledge. Because if you are given only knowledge and you don't have wisdom, then you can maybe go and practice something which is against the norms of the tradition. Thank you.
Thank you, Halake. Pasang.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question. It's very, very important how we transfer to our children our wisdom, our knowledge, our values, practices. Um, I just really feel like when at home, I always tell my husband, he's also professor in the university, be watchful what you talk at home. No, if you talk about just money, or if you talk just about your work, or you just talk about your culture, values, practices, your stories, that will have an impact on your children. Our children will not just listen, but will watch it. So what we do at home, how we participate in our ritual, how we participate in our festival, how we sing our song, how we dance, how we enjoy, or what we talk, or what we crave for, that matters. What transforms children, because I have a little girls, no, they are just 9 years old, and me and my husband, and also my relatives, we really, really be watchful, no, what we talk about. Make sure that they are not polluted with this whole modern worlds, no, that part. Then another part is taking back to your community often, no. No, I'm here like how many of us living in the community? Maybe hardly few of us. But one option we can have is, at least whenever you have time, you go bring your children to your village, make them enjoy the festivals, rituals, song like that. And what I do myself, if I have more than 1 week, I just go back to my village with my kids. No matter, even I just miss out even international meetings or whatever. No, I give the priority so that they are growing from the lands. And this growing from the lands with the wisdom, with our values, practices,
so important. And I will end in one second that I missed last. But my children, they are learning 5 languages now. Nepali English is just common nowadays. But at the same time, they go to the Sherpa school. They are learning Newaris, another indigenous language from the land from Kathmandu, and they are also learning Chinese. So 5 languages, no, and they can sing and song like that. And most important is Sherpa language that makes us togetherness to continue our practice and values. And through participation in the festivals, ritual, culture, dance, rhythms, music, and that is what the different forms of continuity of our shared values and our wisdom. Thank you.
Okay, now we do have to finish. I want to thank you for your question, all of you, for being here, but especially because of the point about bringing your ancestors, your grandmother here. Because to finish, just as Pasang made her prayer, I want to have a moment of reflection and gratefulness to all of our ancestors, all of us here who made it possible for us to be here, and hopefully will empower our voices for much more work to be done in land. So thank you very much all for coming. Okay. Yeah, yeah. A group picture?